In the late 60s, a raucous brand of rock and roll was thriving in the Motor City. Artists like MC5, Iggy Pop, and Alice Cooper.
You couldn't be soft rock in Detroit in '68. If you were Seals and Croft, they would just kill you.
In the midst of the city's gritty music scene was born a magazine as irreverent as rock itself.
Hey, Creem magazine, if you want a free copy.
3729 Cass Avenue. Clear out their offices.
Don't cost you any money. Just send them a letter with your name and address to where?
3729 Cass.
In Detroit, Michigan, the Motor City.
Creem started above a record store on a Detroit street corner.
How would you describe the culture at the magazine?
Chaos?
Scott Crawford is director of the new documentary, Creem, America's only rock and roll magazine.
It's like this ultimate underdog story of this DIY. It started off as a newspaper and then eventually became the #2 music magazine on the newsstands to Rolling Stone.
What did it mean for a band to be in Creem?
Well, for one thing, that was the magazine.
Alice Cooper's debut record, Pretty's for You, caught the ear of Creem's legendary critic, Lester Bangs.
He reviewed our first album as a tragic waste of plastic. Which I always loved that review. I always thought that was such a great review. The tragic waste of plastic.
You weren't offended?
No, it wasn't worth the vinyl that it was pressed on, right?
We really didn't put rock stars on pedestals, which Rolling Stone tended to do. They were much more reverential towards artists.
Jan Uhelski was 19 when she joined Creem in 1970.
I just knew that was where I was supposed to work.
Had you done much writing before you started there?
Oh no, I wrote poetry in my bedroom at night.
Her first cover story was on Smokey Robinson, who just split off from the Miracles.
In 1966, it was Smokey, me, and Unrequited Love. What a threesome. You were my dear Abby, my Ann Landers, my prime confessor. You had more impact on the teenage dilemma than Claricel.
The magazine's mascot, Boy Howdy, was drawn by cartoonist R. Crumb, but its spirit came from the creative tension between Lester Bangs and editor Dave Marsh.
You can strike a balance between approaching music as politics or approaching music without being able to separate it from politics.
You can't. You can't separate it, though. But see, the thing is, like, if you separate it, I mean, what's the point?
I mean, they literally came to blows at one point.
Yes, they did. It was a marvel to watch. It was the Keith Richards and Mick Jagger of songwriting. I mean, that's how we made a magazine, out of the fires of ire.
As film director Cameron Crowe, who wrote for Creem, remembers in the documentary.
What they got to argue about is why and how to love the thing they loved. And out of that came like desperate, reckless, raw, unforgettable coverage of this thing that they were both in love with.
But you cannot make friends with the rock stars.
In Crowe's 2000 film, Almost Famous, Bangs, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, offers advice to a fictional version of Crowe.
These people are not your friends. You know, these are people who want you to write sanctimonious stories about the genius of rock stars, and they will ruin rock and roll and strangle everything we love about it.
Lester and I, before we would go out to do a story, we would look at each other and we would really work each other up. Rock stars are not our friends. Remember, rock stars are not our friends.
But Uhelski briefly became a rock star when she donned Kiss makeup for a story in 1975.
But the crazy part was that Kiss agreed.
How did it feel to be on stage behind all that makeup?
It felt amazing. You really did feel bigger than life. I think it was a story that made me a better writer because I saw what a musician feels.
Creem flourished through the 70s, but when publisher Barry Kramer died of an overdose in 1981, the magazine faltered, and by the end of the decade, Creem was done.
Whatever that thing was that Creem had in its heyday could just never be copied.
When you think of that period in time, how do you think of it?
It was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life.
I say to myself, it's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where a bunch of people started making mountains out of their mashed potatoes, and we experienced something similar. We all came together, and I really treasure that sense of being one with all the people I was there with.